They thought they had me trapped. I was sitting on a folding chair in my garage, paper plate on my knee, when my son-in-law's father pushed an old yellow folder across the workbench. The Sunday potluck was still going strong behind us. Kids laughing, burgers on the grill, sweet tea in plastic cups. He leaned in and said quietly, "We know who you really are, Bob, and we know what you did back in '96. Pay up, or your daughter's wedding won't happen the way you planned. Before I dive into it, tell me where you're listening from. It helps to know someone out there gets it." I took another bite of my wife's potato salad and looked him straight in the eye. They had no clue who they were dealing with, and that was exactly how I liked it. I've spent most of my life letting people think I'm just an ordinary guy. It makes everything easier. Before we get into the story about staying calm, dealing with betrayal, and getting justice the patient way, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you like stories about quiet strength and steady payback, make sure you subscribe. What you're about to hear is one of many true feeling tales built on patience, silence, and doing the right thing in the end. My name is Robert Bob Whitaker. I'm 68 years old. I live in a small brick house outside Dayton, Ohio. I drive a '98 Ford F-150 with 312,000 miles on it and a dent in the tailgate I never got around to fixing. Most people around here see me as an old mechanic who runs a small auto parts shop on the edge of town. They're half right. I do help neighbors fix their cars on Saturdays when they can't afford the dealership prices. But that's only part of the picture. For the last 30 years, I have quietly owned Whitaker Auto Logistics, 17 distribution centers, 4,000 employees, and enough trucks on the road to stretch from here to Chicago. Last year, the company cleared $91 million. I never told anyone. Not my daughter, not my wife, Carol, and definitely not my son-in-law, Ryan. I learned a long time ago that the best place to stay hidden is right in plain sight. Ryan started dating my daughter, Emily, 3 years ago. He's a good guy, smart, honest, and hardworking. He moved up from warehouse supervisor to regional manager on his own. When the old CEO retired, I made sure the board noticed Ryan and offered him the top position. He believed he earned it through hard work, which he mostly did. I just made sure the door was open a little wider for him. For 14 months, things ran smoothly. Ryan cut costs, improved delivery times, and even remembered to call me sir on Sunday dinners. I started to believe he was the real deal. Then last month, his parents flew in from Chicago for our big family potluck. I fired up the grill as usual. Burgers, brats, and Carol's famous 3-bean salad. Everything seemed normal until Victor's dad asked to speak with me alone in the garage. That's when he slid the folder over. It had photocopies of old papers from 1996. His uncle, my former business partner, had claimed I pushed him out and stole the company. Victor had believed the story for years. Now he wanted $2.2 million wired to a family account before the wedding, or he would go public and damage Ryan's reputation. I let him finish talking. Then I took another slow bite of potato salad and said, "Victor, you really should have checked your facts first." He smiled like he had already won. That smile bothered me, not because I was worried, but because he thought I was weak. I didn't get angry. I stayed calm, the same way I did back in '96 when I discovered my partner was taking money and secretly building a competing business with my resources. I spent 6 months collecting solid proof instead of making a scene. I did the same thing here. While Victor was still talking, I was already planning my next steps. I had sensed something was wrong for weeks. Ryan had been acting nervous, avoiding eye contact, and asking odd questions about the company's early days. I made a few quiet calls and learned that Victor had been telling Ryan stories for months, trying to use him as an inside man against me. That hurt, but it also made my choice simple. I never raised my voice. I let the potluck continue like normal, kids playing, neighbors chatting, while I began working on my plan right there among the lawn chairs and the beer cooler. First thing Monday morning, I had my lawyer gather every original document from 1996, bank records, signed contracts, and the accountant's affidavit about the forgeries. I had kept them safe in a fireproof box for 30 years. I also had security footage from the company warehouse that Victor didn't know about. Ryan had been going through files late at night, more than once or twice. It was enough to show it wasn't simple curiosity. His father had convinced him it was the only way to protect the family. I watched that footage several times. It hurt less each time because I saw the moment on Ryan's face when he realized he was doing something wrong. He stopped, looked toward the camera, and closed the file. That small pause told me a lot about the man my daughter loved. So, I waited. 2 weeks later, Victor called for another family meeting. Same garage, same folding chairs. This time, he brought his wife and a thicker folder. He thought he had the upper hand. He started reading the old papers out loud, loud enough for the neighbors to hear if they wanted. He repeated his demands: money, a public apology, and Ryan stepping down. I let him finish talking. Then I reached under my workbench, pulled out my own plain white envelope, and slid it across the table. "Before you say anything else," I told him, "you should read these." The papers showed the real story. His uncle had stolen over $435,000, forged signatures, and even tried to burn down the warehouse for insurance money. The last page was a signed statement from his uncle, written 2 months before he died, admitting everything. Victor's hands began to shake, but the bigger shock was still coming. "You don't just work for that company," I said, letting the words sink in. "You've been running it for me." Ryan looked confused. "What?" "Whitaker Auto Logistics has been mine for 30 years, I told him. I held his gaze. "Every promotion you received, every paycheck you signed, it all came from me." I explained the full truth. I had owned the company the entire time. I had chosen him to lead it because I saw real potential in him. I stayed quiet on purpose so I could see what kind of man he was when he thought no one was watching. The garage went completely silent. Ryan stared at me for a moment, then turned to his father and said words I will always remember. "Dad, I'm not doing this. I love Emily, and I'm not going to shake down the best man I've ever worked for." Victor tried to argue. His wife started crying. But Ryan shook his head. "I stopped being your pawn the day I realized you were using me to hurt my own family." That's when everything changed. Victor and his wife left without saying another word. They didn't even finish their food. Ryan stayed behind. He sat down on the same folding chair and looked me in the eye. "I don't deserve to keep the job after what I almost did." I leaned back and smiled for the first time in weeks. "Ryan," I said, "you just proved you do deserve it. A weak man would have stayed quiet and sided with his father. You didn't. That's why you're still CEO on Monday morning." We sat in the garage until the sun went down, talking man to man with nothing left hidden. He told me how scared he had been. I told him how proud I was. We shook hands as equals. 2 months have passed since that Sunday potluck. Victor hasn't called again. Emily and Ryan got married last weekend in the same backyard where things almost fell apart. I walked my daughter down the aisle wearing the same oil-stained boots I wear every day. Ryan looked at me and smiled like a son. I still drive the old F-150. I still fix neighbors' cars on Saturdays, and I still haven't told most people who I really am. Some secrets are worth keeping. The best kind of payback isn't loud or angry. It's sitting in your own garage eating potato salad while the people who tried to break you realize they just reminded you of something they can never take away: your dignity and your family. If you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated because of how you look, how old you are, or how quietly you carry yourself, drop a comment and tell me one time someone thought you were small. I read every single one.
And if you like stories about patience, justice, and quiet dads who come on top, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell. We have plenty more where this came from. Thanks for spending this time with an old mechanic from Ohio. I'll see you in the next one.